Andy Lee
Yes.
is going to introduce what's new with Haxe 4.
Thank you. We don't have many people here, but well, that's good. That means well, we can talk to each other during the talk, and yeah, just be careful. And I don't mind. I'll stop you any time if you want. So yeah, I'm Andy. Previously I've worked for the Haxe Foundation for a year. They pay me to do it full time, and once now I am back to doing it voluntarily. And I'm mainly kind of maintain the CI service and do random stuff with the Haxe ecosystem. And yeah, right now I'm working on my own startup called gift.io, which is kind of a website that lets people to stay what you want, kind of like a wish list, and then kind of like a wish list combined with a crowdfunding service that your friends can collectively buy the gift for you. And then it's also written in Haxe and it's open source also, so you may try it out later. And I also have a coupon at the end of the slide, so so you may want to wait for the end of my talk. And so in this talk we'll talk about what's new in Haxe 4. So Haxe 4 itself is not really released yet. It's at RC3 right now, and then there are a bunch of stuff. There's like some new syntax, new targets, new features for safety or for performance, and then I'm going to briefly have a very high-level overview of that. Yeah, such that if you are interested, you can take it deeper by yourself. Yeah, because there are too many new things, so I don't think I will. It's impossible for me to cover all of them within the talk. Yeah. So first of all, well, Haxe is always about these targets because well, it's famous for comparing to many different languages like PHP, C#, C++, what else? Lua, Python. And we do have some new targets in Haxe 4. One of them is HashLink. It is a virtual machine. It's kind of like Neko, if we know that is another virtual machine that is written by the author of Haxe, Nicholas. And then the major difference between the new one, between HashLink and Neko is that the HashLink bytecode is typed, so and then it has a lot of different performance optimization within that, so it's kind of much faster than Neko. And then there are two ways to use Haxe to target this virtual machine. One is to just compile your Haxe code into this HL bytecode. HL stands for HashLink. And then you will use the HashLink runtime to run the bytecode. And then the other way is to compile to C. And then the C source code will then link with the HashLink runtime. And then finally it will produce a native executable. So actually the performance, I heard that is not that difference between the two. It's mostly that, well, when you use bytecode, it's easier for you to iterate during the development process, so yeah, because the C compiler is kind of slow comparing to like Haxe compiler. But some of the deployment targets does not allow you to use a VM. For example, in iOS, you cannot use a VM. You have to use native code to do so. You cannot have JIT. So yeah. The C source code target is kind of decided specifically for that. And then, yeah, the HashLink target is mostly used in games. There are a few ones that is kind of, I think it's quite successful. One is Northgard, and the other is Dead Cells, and then also Darkbird. Darkbird, I think is the latest one.
It's not released yet.
It's not released yet. Okay, I didn't know that. that. Yeah, so if you want to try, just browse around and see the trailers. And then the other targets in Haxe 4 is about the Java one. We already have a Java target, but this one is a little bit different. It's a JVM bytecode target. That means the compilation output is directly a jar instead of Java files that you have to use a Java compiler to compile it. So we directly produce the JVM bytecode in this target. So there are a few advantages. For example, because you do not have to use a Java compiler now, so you do not have a dependency on JDK. That's kind of like simplify the setup for development. And it's faster because, again, you don't have to launch the Java compiler. And then I've heard that it produces better runtime performance. I haven't really benchmarked it, so I'm not quite sure how much faster is that. And then another thing is that we are no longer restricted by the Java language design. And in the existing Java target, there are some specific restrictions. For example, in Java, you have to always call the super call in your constructor before you do anything else. That is a language designed by Java, but that is not a restriction from the JVM. So if we target the JVM directly, we can actually arrange the super call after you do something with, I don't know, whatever you want. Yeah, so yeah, there are some other things that is kind of some other restriction that is restricted by the Java language, and we can work around it with the bytecode target. And one more target that is kind of new in Haxe 4 is the eval target. It's not actually a new target, but it's actually a rewrite of the old macro interpreter. So macro is kind of very powerful features that is loved by the community in Haxe, and you can do all kind of crazy stuff with it. So people kind of try to abuse of it and use a lot of macros to do a lot of things during the compilation stage. So if it's faster, that means you can abuse it kind of even more, and then you can do even more things during the compilation stage. And yeah, so the rewrite of it is basically for the performance. It's now several times faster in some cases, and it also have pretty good interactive debugging support. There is VS Code extension for debugging for the Haxe compiler macro. Yeah, so you can step in or out of function and look at the variables and do kind of stuff, do the usual stuff for debugging. And let's talk about the syntax. And so we do not have that many changes in syntax. We mainly want to try to make the weird stuff look more normal, I would say. So one thing that I think I have always thought that is wrong is the function type syntax. The old one used the arrows to separate the parameters types and also the return types. So it reads like string, arrow, int, arrow, bool means that it accepts two parameters. It accepts a string and then it accepts an integer and then it will return a boolean. But it is kind of funny because if you know functional programming, is actually this syntax notation is kind of come from functional programming, but they have kind of different semantics in those languages. It actually means a function that will return, for this example, it actually means that there is a function that accepts a string that will produce another function that will take an int and then finally it will return a boolean. So there is kind of function curving thing, but this is actually not the case for Haxe. So yeah, we just introduced a new syntax for Haxe type, Haxe function type that is more similar to, I think, similar to Java, similar to TypeScript. Yeah, basically we also have the ability to state the function parameter names within the function type that is kind of useful for development. It's kind of self-documented function type. Yeah. Another new syntax is also about function. It's about function definition. So in JavaScript, there is a thing called the arrow function, fat arrow syntax, I would say. Yeah. So we also introduced something very similar to that, but instead of using fat arrow, we use a thinner one. Yeah. But basically, there's not much difference. It's just sort of easier to write, logs prettier, yeah. And then the old one will be kept, yeah. And then we have intersection type. It's about the anonymous structure of Haxe. It's basically tells the compiler what kind of fields and methods of those anonymous structure. So the intersection types is kind of like merging different, like here type 3 should have the fields of type 1 and type 2, and then it has its own field, named the field. And then we have a new syntax that we use the enzyme to combine that. Yeah, I think it looks a little bit nicer, and then logically it shows that those three components are actually on the same level, but they do not have a hierarchy like the old syntax kind of suggested. Yeah, and then let's move on to the features. We have some safety features introduced. The first one is null-safety. Yeah, because null exception is kind of painful things that come from, I don't know, having null as a feature, and then because it's kind of heavily inspired by Java, and we also have null value, so yeah, we have to introduce some features such that to try to let the compiler check whether a variable is possible to have null or not, and then it will. This feature is kind of an opt-in feature, so you have to enable it by attaching metadata in front of a class or method, or you can actually enable it using a compilation argument. Yeah. So when you, for example, when you have this null-safety tag or in front of a method, then it will check the null-safety thing. For example, here the method accepts optional string, so the s parameter can be null. I mean the s argument can be null, and then when if you use it without checking whether it's null or not, before that it will complain it, and then the way to avoid that compilation error is to have a if statement that check whether s is null or not first, then it won't complain. Yeah. The other one, we have introduced a proper final keyword for Haxe. Basically, it's kind of similar to Java. The final keyword can be attached to a class. When it's attached to a class, then the class cannot be extended. And then if you put it in front of class variable, then it means that well, the variable cannot be reassigned to some other values. And then you can reassign it like this during the declaration of the variable, or you can assign the value inside the constructor. Yeah. And then you can put it in front of a method. That means that you cannot override the method. And then you can put it in front of a variable. That means, again, you cannot reassign the variable to anything else. And note that this final only means you cannot reassign the thing. That doesn't mean the value is holding is actually immutable. So if you hold it with an array, then you can actually still change the content of the array. But the variable itself will always point to the initial value. Yeah. So another feature, this one is for performance tuning. We have function inlining since like a dozen years ago already, and then function inlining is just to remove the overhead of function call when calling a function. So when you call an inline function, it will actually copy and paste the function body to the call site. The call site is where you call the function. So you do not actually call the function, but you just do whatever the function wants to do inside that part. And it is very useful for performance tuning, but previously an inline function has to be inlined. I mean, when you declare an inline function, you declare it as inline, then whenever you use it, it will always be inlined in different places. I mean, almost usually. I mean, almost always. But now you have the option to selectively inline the function in different spaces. And then this thing is good is to kind of work around the disadvantage of inlining. That is, when you inline the function, the output of the compiler is actually much larger than do not using inlining, because usually the function have a lot of expression inside that. When you copy all the expression to all the core size, that means, well, the file size will be much larger. Then, well, it kind of also hurt the performance in some way. So a lot of time you do not want to do inline in all the places. You only do inline in the performance bottleneck. So for the performance critical loop, you can now call a function and then say that you want to inline that specific call to the function. And then all the other places do not have inline, but only for the performance critical path. Yeah, so I think it's useful for performance tuning. And then another new thing, kind of new thing, is unicode support. And we have always been talking about improving the unicode scenario in Haxe for quite a long time, and then we finally is able to do something with it. And there's not much thing I can talk about because I don't really have too much time now. It is a little bit complicated about Unicode, as it always is. And basically, we now just guarantee that, well, when you call the length, or when you count the character inside a string, or when you try to look at specific character inside a string, it will always do the expected things. Instead of previously, if you do string in for example, C or C++, you may have trouble to get the correct length, because like for Chinese character, it's actually use 2 bytes to store a Chinese character, so it may return the length is 2 in this case for C++, and then we kind of normalize all the targets, so yeah, it's guaranteed to return 1 for 1 character. And so the unicode thing is, also has some performance implication. That is for unicode encoding, a lot of targets use variable length for different characters. So for ABCD, you just use 1 byte to store it, but for Chinese character, you use 2 bytes. Then that is not really a problem for most of the time, unless when you want to selectively like show the character of the try to find out what is the third character or what is the nth character. Then you have to try to look at the character one by one from the start to look at it, but you cannot calculate like 2 times the length of each character and then find the individual position in the memory to pick the character out. And the way to kind of solve it is to introduce some kind of key value iterator. So right now, when you actually want to look at individual character inside a string, you can use the key value iterator that will simultaneously give you the index and the character code of the string. And then, of course, if you want, you can convert the character code back to the actual string if you want. Yeah. So this is kind of a new syntax also. Another thing is ESX classes. So in Haxe 3, we only produce old school JavaScript outputs that when you write a Haxe class like this, it will produce JavaScript that makes use of the JavaScript prototype object to try to like do the override or extend things that we normally do nowadays with ESX class. Well, for these features is not, yeah, there's not much impact to normal people because like everything just works. It's just that it now produces kind of prettier code in JavaScript. So if you are only targeting browser that supports ESX class, you can opt in to use the prettier output of that. And there are some minor things between ESX class and the prototype thing, and then some features is only available in ESX class. And yeah, you can also use these features to make use of that. But most of the time, you don't really want, you don't really care. I don't say you don't really want, but you don't care about whether it's ESX output or not. Yeah. And then that was kind of most of the major features in Haxe 4 that I just go through. And then there are also some of the things that we plan to work on, but it's not, I don't think we will have time to put it in Haxe 4, maybe Haxe 4.1 or Haxe 5 or sometime in the future, but those are planned, but we don't know yet. The things are coroutines, and there is a design, an experimental design by Dan. And then we have module level function and variables. So right now you have to always have declare a class to hold all the variables and all the functions. There is no top level function there. And then we are trying to plan to have module level functions. It's kind of like a top level function. So yeah, it's just that you don't always have to write a class to hold your main function or your utility function. And then we plan to introduce a new set of system API that is for accessing the file system. So right now, the existing ones are all synchronous. And then we want to have a set that is asynchronous. That is, well, good for usability. And then we also have the design there. So if you want, you can check it out. And yeah, I think I've also posted the slides I used here to my Twitter account that is have always been at the bottom corner there. So if you want to take a look at these links, you can find the slide on my Twitter and yeah, just read the proposals. And then, yeah, please try our RC. Currently, we are at release candidate 3. We are not very sure whether this is the final RC or not. Maybe we will have a few more or something. Yeah, but please try it out and then give us feedback whether we broke anything or if you have any comment. So finally, the last thing is that here is a coupon code for my startup website thing. So yeah, again, my website is for you to state what you want, to have a wish list, and then after you post your wish list, you can ask your friend to buy the thing for you collectively. So say if you want to have a PS4, then the PS4 is too expensive for your friend, for your one friend to buy it, but if you have like 10 friends, maybe they can collectively buy the PS4 for you. That is the idea of my website, and then that one is totally written in Haxe, and then yeah, it's also open sourced. I put it on GitLab, and then you can find it out. So this coupon is $5 or 35 Hong Kong dollar, and then yeah, just apply it. And there's no cost on the wish making part, so you may just put it there and see if anyone actually wants to buy the gift for you, or if there's no one, then you don't lose any money. So that's all. Do you have any question? No? Then sorry? Yes? No? Well, if you have any question, you can always reach me after the talk. So thanks a lot. Thank you.